Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Interesting Chinese Culture. In our main historical storyline, we are now in the Three Kingdoms period of Chinese history. Romance of the Three Kingdoms can be called a super rich mine of Chinese idioms. There are more than 300 idioms and historical references connected to it alone. Even today, behind everyday Chinese conversation, you can still see the shadow of Three Kingdoms stories. So today, let's talk about Chinese idioms. In Chinese, there is a very special language phenomenon. 4 characters, or even a shorter phrase, can hold a story, a judgment, a personality, a war, or even a whole set of life experience. When foreigners first start learning Chinese, they often find this very strange. To understand why idioms are so developed in Chinese, we first need to look at the nature of Chinese characters. Chinese characters are not phonetic letters. They have a strong visual structure. One character often carries meaning by itself. When 2 characters are combined, they can form a new meaning. When 4 characters are placed together, the rhythm becomes very stable. Ancient written Chinese favored brevity, especially on early writing materials such as bamboo slips, wooden tablets, silk manuscripts, and bronze inscriptions, where space was limited. Writing was difficult, and materials were precious, so expression naturally became compact. Later, even after paper became common, the tradition of concise writing had already formed. Sentences in ancient texts often used very few characters, but carried a high density of meaning. Idioms fit this tradition perfectly. They are short, steady, easy to memorize, and easy to use again and again in different contexts. Actually, to be more precise, it is not that only Chinese has idioms. More accurately, many languages have idioms, meaning fixed expressions. But it is indeed rare for a language to compress so much history, allusion, fable, and philosophy into 4 characters, and then form such a large, stable, learnable, and traceable idiom system. English also has similar expressions, such as spill the beans, break the ice, a blessing in disguise, Rome wasn't built in a day. But they are usually not 4 characters or 4 words, and they do not always come from a clear historical story. The most unique part of Chinese idioms is this: they are not ordinary spoken slang. They are highly literary, historical, and elusive language fossils. Almost every language in the world has fixed sayings, familiar metaphors, and commonly accepted phrases. But very few languages have developed this kind of expression to the same precise level as Chinese. When foreigners learn Chinese, they are often shocked by the number and compactness of 4-character idioms. Just 4 characters can explain a situation, describe a person, and even carry a complete story and historical background. So what exactly happened behind this? In other words, what kind of historical journey did the Chinese idiom we see today go through? Before answering that question, we can first bring our attention back to the phrase itself. Think carefully about the 2 characters in Qingyu. What does Qing mean? It means something already formed, already completed, something you do not need to invent on the spot. What about Yu? It means language, sentence, or expression. So the literal meaning of Qingyu is a ready-made, widely accepted expression. Because it is not something assembled temporarily, but something used again and again over many years and polished by time, it does not need much explanation. The moment people hear it, they understand what it means. This is a little like a proverb or a saying in Western languages, but the emotional and informational density of Chinese idioms is truly unique. For foreigners who do not understand Chinese at all, the fastest way to understand Qingyu is to imagine them as a special kind of compressed file in Chinese. Each idiom usually has only 4 characters, but inside it, there is often a whole piece of history, a complete story, or a feeling that Chinese people understand almost instinctively. You can think of it this way. English has similar things too. For example, break a leg does not really mean breaking someone's leg. It means good luck. Raining cats and dogs does not mean cats and dogs are falling from the sky. It means heavy rain. Chinese idioms do something similar, but their history is deeper, their stories are stronger, and once 4 characters are spoken, they can often do the work of 10 ordinary sentences. For example, if you are working on a project with a Chinese colleague and the 2 of you cooperate very smoothly, he might say, "We are truly like fish in water." This does not mean you have turned into a fish in water. It comes from Romance of the Three Kingdoms. After Liu Bei gained the strategist Zhu Zholiang, he happily said that having Kongming was like a fish having water. It means finding the environment or partner that suits you best, so everything becomes especially smooth. So when you hear Chinese people use like fish in water to describe a relationship, you know they are not talking about swimming. They are expressing an extremely satisfying kind of cooperation or companionship. So how are idioms used in daily conversation? Very simply, they work like idioms in English. You just place them directly into a sentence. You can say, "To prepare for this exam, I have been reviewing for 3 months. Now everything is ready, and all we need is the east wind." This phrase, "everything is ready, and all we need is the east wind," comes from the Battle of Red Cliffs. Before burning Cao Cao's warships, all the fire materials and boats were ready. The only thing missing was a southeast wind. Today, it means that everything has been prepared and only the final condition is still missing. When Chinese people use it in conversation, it sounds clean and efficient, while carrying a little taste of history. It is as natural as an English speaker casually saying, "Cry wolf." Another especially interesting example is "Speak of Cao Cao and Cao Cao arrives." You are talking about someone with a friend, and before you even finish speaking, that person walks through the door. At that moment, a Chinese person may say this phrase right away. It does not really have much to do with Cao Cao himself. It comes from a scene in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Emperor Shan of Han is talking about Cao Cao coming to rescue him, and in the very next moment, Cao Cao actually appears. So this phrase simply describes the coincidence of someone appearing right when they are being mentioned. It carries a little humor and teasing. Of course, when some idioms are used in sentences, Chinese people themselves may not explain every single character to you, because the idiom has already become part of collective memory. For example, if you see a beginner showing off in front of an expert, someone nearby may quietly say, "This is waving a big blade in front of Guanggong." Guanggong is the top master of using a big blade in the Three Kingdoms world. Showing off your blade in front of him means humiliating yourself. So this sentence does not need to be translated into English as showing off in front of an expert. By using this idiom directly, 4 characters plus 1 name, everyone understands. Idioms are super concentrated capsules in Chinese. You do not need to understand the original meaning of every single character. You only need to remember each idiom as a whole. The reason idioms are so highly developed in Chinese, at the most fundamental level, is closely tied to the Chinese writing system itself. Other languages use alphabetic writing. A word is made up of letters, and factors like syllables and tones are not as central, but Chinese characters are meaning-based. Each character has its own sound, its own shape, and its own meaning. This means Chinese vocabulary is built by placing characters side by side. Each single character carries a clear meaning, and when 2, 3, or 4 characters come together, they create new and more complex meanings on top of the original ones. In the earliest stage, Chinese was mostly made up of single-syllable words, where one character meant one thing, like person, horse, mountain, and water. But as human society became more complex, single-syllable words were no longer enough. So Chinese began to form many 2-syllable words, like country, land, and people, and this immediately expanded what the language could express. Once 2-syllable words became stable, the language continued to develop, and 4-character phrases naturally appeared. This shift from single-syllable to double-syllable to 4-syllable structures is an important linguistic foundation for the creation of idioms. So why 4 characters, and not 3 or 5? This has to do with the rhythm of the Chinese language. Chinese values harmony and sound. When you read 4 characters aloud, they naturally create a rising and falling rhythm. The sound has a beginning and an ending, and it carries a kind of musical quality that strengthens expression. You can try reading "Mountains clear, waters beautiful." The tones rise and fall in a natural pattern, and it sounds crisp and pleasant. If you change it to 3 words, like "very beautiful," or "too tired," the rhythm feels flatter, with less depth. If you use 5 characters, it becomes less neat and compact. But 4 characters can be divided into a 2+2 structure. The first 2 characters form one unit, and the last 2 form another. It is not too short to feel rushed, and not too long to feel dragging. China developed a strong tradition of recording history very early on. People were used to writing about individuals, events, wars, and political judgments in historical texts, and they also liked to extract lessons from the past. In the Chinese view of history, the past is never just the past. It is constantly used to explain the present. How a ruler succeeded, how a strategist chose his leader, how a general used troops, how a person maintained loyalty, or how someone lost opportunity because of a wrong decision. All of these topics were discussed again and again by later generations. Over time, historical figures entered everyday language. names like Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Zhuge Liang, and Guan Yu are no longer just characters in stories. They have become cultural symbols that people use when talking about personality, strategy, loyalty, opportunity, ability, and human relationships. The development of idioms is also closely related to traditional education in China. Traditional learning emphasized memorization, explanation, and repeated writing. Children did not just learn pronunciation and meaning. They also learned historical stories and moral judgments. Idioms became a very useful teaching tool. For example, to give one's whole life to a cause is often used today to describe someone who works for something until the very end. In the world of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, this phrase is closely tied to Zhuge Liang. For foreign listeners, if you only translate it as to devote oneself completely, the meaning is correct, but something is missing. Its real power in Chinese comes from the figure of Zhuge Liang behind it, and from the traditional cultural value placed on loyalty, responsibility, and self-discipline. From a historical perspective, idioms were not formed in a single period all at once. In the pre-Qin era, before the Qin dynasty unified China, there were already many regional cultures, aristocratic rituals, war stories, and philosophical debates across different states. At that time, many states existed side by side, interacting and fighting frequently. Persuasion, debate, alliances, rituals, and military strategy were all highly developed. Language had to be sharp, concise, and persuasive. If someone wanted to convince a ruler, they could not speak in a loose and scattered way. If a strategist wanted to express an idea, they had to make a complex situation clear. As a result, short sentences, balanced structures, and clear judgments became highly valued. Later, this aesthetic of language continued into the writings and literature of the Han, Wei, Jin, Tang, Song, and later dynasties, eventually shaping the style we see in idioms today. If we turn the clock back to ancient China, as early as the Shang and Zhou dynasties, people had already developed a strong tradition of recording history. Every ruler had official historians by his side. Their job was to faithfully record what the ruler said, what he did, the orders he gave, and the major events that happened in the court. Over generations, these records accumulated and eventually formed the rich body of classical texts. In Chinese culture, people value having a source. When speaking or writing, they are used to quoting what earlier sages said or did to strengthen their arguments. For example, if a minister wanted to persuade a ruler not to go to war, he might say that in the past, a ruler of the Xia dynasty brought about his own downfall through constant warfare, and that this lesson should be remembered. This way of speaking forced people to revisit historical events again and again. Each time they revisited them, they would extract the most important details and key phrases. Over time, a complex historical event could be compressed into just a few words. The key names, key dialogue, and key locations were preserved inside. So at its core, an idiom is a kind of invention that compresses a typical historical scene into a short symbol. This compression works because when people hear these 4 characters, they immediately think of that real history or that well-known story. And Chinese people developed this habit because from a young age, they were taught that quoting what came before is the most reliable and most cultured way to express an idea. During the Spring and Autumn and Warring States periods, the time when thinkers like Confucius, Laozi, Zhuangzi, and Mencius were active, there was a very intense wave of intellectual debate in China. Different schools, including Confucianism, Taoism, legalism, Mohism, military strategists, and political persuaders all tried to present their own views on politics and life. They all faced the same problem: how to express the deepest meaning with the fewest words. 4 characters turned out to be just right. If they used 8 or 10 characters, or a long paragraph, it became hard to remember and hard to spread. But if they used only 1 or 2 characters, the meaning would not be clear enough. So 4 characters became the most stable rhythm. A 4-character phrase is smooth to read, easy to pronounce, and naturally forms a steady rhythm. It is neither too rushed nor too slow. It flows easily in speech and stays in memory. Many philosophical ideas from this era of debate were gradually condensed into 4-character idioms, including ideas about learning, self-cultivation, and how to deal with people and the world. After the Qin and Han dynasties, another major change took place. When the first emperor of Qin unified the 6 states, he carried out a decision that had a very deep impact: the unification of the writing system. Before this, different states had writing systems with a common origin, but their forms had already begun to differ. The first emperor ordered these variations to be standardized into one unified system. From that point on, people across the whole country used the same standard for writing. This use of administrative power to unify the script cleared the way for idioms to spread across regions. Whether you were from the former state of Qi or Chu, you now wrote using the same system. An expression that appeared in one region could quickly travel across the land because everyone recorded it in the same way. The Han Dynasty continued this structure, and more importantly, it established an education system that placed Confucian classics at the highest level of learning. The system for selecting officials required candidates to be familiar with these classics and to show their ability to understand and quote them in examinations. Under these conditions, all scholars who wanted to succeed were guided in the same direction. They became extremely familiar with a limited group of classical texts and learned to extract key phrases from them at any time. The more skillfully someone could quote these texts, the better their chances in official life. This created a system that ensured the scholarly class had deep familiarity with the classics. In court discussions, official memorials, and personal letters, they used these established phrases again and again. Through repeated use, these phrases became fixed, forming the idioms we see today. This cultural pattern is generally considered to have begun forming in the late spring and autumn period during the time of Confucius and continued developing through the Warring States period. By the Han Dynasty, when Confucianism became the official ideology, it had largely matured. Among many different forms of expression, the four-character structure gradually stood out and eventually became dominant, turning into the main format of Chinese idioms. During the Wei Jin and Northern and Southern dynasties, Chinese society went through division, constant warfare, and cultural mixing. Nomadic groups from the north moved into the Central Plains, while southern regimes continued the traditions of Han aristocratic culture. People migrated frequently, and language and customs changed through constant contact. In this period, people paid great attention to judging character. They liked to talk about a person's style, wit, and way of speaking. A single sentence, one action, or one decision could be recorded and spread widely. The long-lasting popularity of Three Kingdoms stories is closely connected to this tradition of evaluating people. After the Tang and Song dynasties, urban life, commerce, and printing technology all developed quickly. Books became easier to spread, and popular entertainment grew more diverse. Storytelling, historical narration, opera, and tea-house performances became important ways for ordinary people to learn about history. The Three Kingdoms stories became more and more refined through long-term retelling. On one hand, they came from historical records. On the other hand, they were shaped and enriched by folk storytellers, and finally reached a powerful literary form in the Ming Dynasty novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The reason this work preserved and spread so many idioms and sayings is clear. It has the structure of history, but also dramatic character relationships. It includes military strategy, but also loyalty and friendship. It tells stories of emperors and generals, but also expresses everyday human judgment that ordinary people can understand. It turns complex political history into a story about fate that anyone can follow. In the Ming and Qing dynasties, vernacular novels and traditional opera played a huge role in spreading idioms. Many ordinary people may never have read official historical texts, but they had heard Three Kingdoms stories, watched stage performances, or listened to elders talk about figures like Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Zhu Zheliang, and Cao Cao. Novels and opera made these characters vivid, and people in everyday life kept using short phrases to summarize their traits. As a result, idioms and sayings became part of daily language. For example, performing with a big blade in front of Guan Yu is used today to describe showing off in front of a true expert. In traditional Chinese culture, Guan Yu has long been seen as a symbol of martial skill, loyalty, and authority. If someone shows off weapon skills in front of him, the image itself is already ironic. It does not need a long explanation, because the picture is clear. Even if a foreign listener does not know Guan Yu in detail, once they understand he is a famous warrior in Chinese culture, they can quickly see why the expression is humorous. There is also a very concrete driving force behind the spread of idioms, and that is the imperial examination system. This system was formally established in the Sui dynasty and continued until the end of the Qing dynasty. For nearly 1,300 years, anyone in China who wanted to become an official had to pass through the same narrow path. They had to study the same Confucian classics and write in the same structured essay style. These essays demanded extremely concise language. If something could be said in 2 characters, it should not take 3. If a sentence could be completed in 4 characters, not a single extra word should be added. Using a well-chosen idiom in an essay showed the examiner that the writer was familiar with the classics and had strong control of language. This directly affected exam results. So for generations, countless scholars were driven by this very practical need to memorize idioms, use them, and even create new ones. Together, they became the strongest engine behind the continuous production and spread of idioms. Let's look at a few specific examples. We can use the story we are telling right now, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, as our example. First, let's look at looking at plums to stop thirst. This is the direct English translation. Later generations used these four characters to describe comforting a real situation with something imagined. When you cannot actually get what you need, you first give yourself something to think about, and you use that thought to get through the hardest moment in front of you. The story is about Cao Cao leading his army during a campaign. The weather was terribly hot. The sun burned above their heads, and the ground was heated until it almost seemed to scorch their feet. The soldiers had walked a long way, and the water they carried had already run out, but there was no water source anywhere nearby. Cao Cao saw the situation and understood very clearly that if this army collapsed here, the consequences would be terrible once the enemy caught up. So he quickly came up with an idea. He rode to the front of the line, suddenly raised his whip, pointed toward a distant forest ahead, and shouted, "Soldiers, I know that forest ahead. There is a large plum grove there. The plums are big, plentiful, sweet, and sour. Let's push forward a little more. Once we get there, everyone will have plums to eat." When the soldiers heard this, they immediately imagined those sour and sweet green plums. Their mouths began watering without control. With that wet feeling in their mouths, their thirst seemed to ease a little, and their morale quickly rose. In the end, the army gritted its teeth and held on until they reached water. Cao Cao's method in this idiom only sustained morale for a short time, but behind it was the kind of wisdom often used by ancient Chinese military and political leaders. When real conditions are not enough, a little psychological suggestion can still encourage people and help hold the situation together in a desperate moment. Now let's talk about like a fish getting water. This is the direct English translation. It is used to describe a person finding the environment that suits them best, or meeting someone who fits them perfectly. This idiom comes from Liu Bei. Although Liu Bei had an impressive title and was known as Imperial Uncle Liu, he was always in a weak military position. He had no stable territory. One day, he relied on one person. The next day, he depended on someone else. Around him, he had fierce warriors like Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, men strong enough to face thousands, but he always felt he was missing someone who could make plans and offer strategy. Later, he heard about Zhu Zhiliang, known as Master Sleeping Dragon, so Liu Bei personally went into the mountains to find him. The first two visits failed. Only on the third visit did he finally meet Zhu Zhiliang. Zhu Zhiliang then presented the strategic vision of dividing the realm into 3 parts. After Liu Bei heard it, everything suddenly became clear to him. He was overjoyed and said a famous line, "Having Zhu Zhiliang's assistance was like a fish getting water." From then on, like a fish getting water became an idiom. What makes this image so powerful? A fish cannot live without water. Once it leaves water, it almost immediately struggles, flips, and dies. When Liu Bei said that gaining Zhu Zhiliang was like a fish gaining water, it meant that before this, his life had been a constant struggle on the edge of survival. To bow and exhaust oneself completely is another direct translation. These 4 characters hold an extremely high place in the hearts of Chinese people. Later, this phrase was widely used to describe someone giving everything to their duty or cause without holding anything back and without caring about personal hardship or even life itself. In Chinese history, many scholars and officials treated these words as a life motto. This spirit has, to some extent, shaped the idea of devotion in Chinese culture. This phrase comes from a very famous literary work written by Zhu Zhiliang, the Chu Shibiao, or Memorial Before the Campaign. It was even included as a required memorization text in Chinese middle school language textbooks. The story takes place before Zhu Zhiliang prepared to lead troops north to campaign in the Central Plains. He wrote this memorial to the emperor at that time, Lu Shen, the ruler he served. The general meaning is that Zhu Zhiliang said, "The late Emperor Liu Bei showed me great kindness by visiting me 3 times, and I promised to support his cause. Now the late emperor has passed away, and I have accepted the heavy responsibility he entrusted to me. I must do everything I can to fulfill it." At the end of the memorial, Zhu Zhiliang wrote this famous line, "Bow and exhaust oneself completely until death brings an end." To bow means to bend forward in respect, showing an attitude of obedience and duty. To exhaust oneself means not only to use all one's strength, but to continue even through extreme fatigue. So this phrase means bending oneself fully to the task and giving all one's strength, continuing even when exhausted to the utmost degree and not stopping until the day of death. All is ready except for the east wind. This idiom becomes even more interesting when you look closely at its story. On the eve of one of the most famous battles in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the Battle of Red Cliffs, Cao Cao's massive army moved down the river with overwhelming force. On the side of eastern Wu, the commander Zhou Yu made a plan to use fire to burn Cao Cao's fleet. But a fire attack like this depends on nature. If you want to burn the enemy's ships, the wind must blow toward them so the fire can spread with full force. If the wind blows the wrong way, not only will it fail to harm the enemy, it will burn your own forces instead. Zhou Yu calculated everything. The ships were ready, the materials for the fire attack were prepared, the troops were in position, everything was perfect, except for the east wind. Without that wind, the entire plan would fail, and all the preparation would be wasted. Later, Zhuge told Zhou Yu that he could bring the east wind. And from this story came the idiom, all is ready except for the east wind. It means that everything has been prepared, and only the final, most crucial condition is missing. Once that last condition is met, success is guaranteed. This idiom is used very widely. When Chinese people feel that something is almost done and only one last step is missing, they will often say, all is ready except for the east wind. Speak of Cao Cao, and Cao Cao appears. This expression is used constantly in daily life. When someone is talking about another person, and before the sentence is even finished, that person suddenly shows up at the door, people will smile and say this line. Again, this comes from a story in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The Emperor Han Xiandi was once chased by rebel forces and forced to flee. At one point, he had no way out and sent someone to ask Cao Cao for help. The messenger had just set out when Cao Cao had already arrived with his army. The timing was so perfect that it felt almost unbelievable, so people began using this phrase to describe such coincidences. Over time, most people forgot that it originally came from the emperor's desperate situation. Now, it is simply used to describe those strange and perfectly timed moments in everyday life. A good bird chooses a tree to nest in. A wise minister chooses a lord to serve. This idea is fundamental in ancient Chinese political culture. This phrase appears many times in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It explains how talented people should choose whom to serve. Just like a good bird selects a safe tree to build its nest, a capable and virtuous minister should choose a ruler worthy of their loyalty. This reflects a very practical attitude among scholars in ancient China. It does not mean a person must follow one ruler forever. If a ruler is not worthy, a capable minister has the right to leave and seek another. Now let's move to a type of expression called two-part sayings. One of the most common ones is Zhou Yu beats Huang Gai, one is willing to strike, the other is willing to take it. This saying is even more widely used than many idioms. Before the Battle of Red Cliffs, the veteran general Huang Gai discussed a plan with Zhou Yu. He would pretend to surrender to Cao Cao. To make it convincing, Huang Gai acted as if he had violated military law, and Zhou Yu publicly ordered him to be severely beaten in front of the army. After 50 strokes, Huang Gai was covered in blood and nearly fainted. Why go so far? It was to convince Cao Cao's spies that Huang Gai had truly fallen out with Zhou Yu and genuinely wanted to defect. So when Huang Gai later approached Cao Cao's camp with ships filled with flammable materials, the enemy was completely unprepared. The suffering was part of the act. Later, people used this saying to describe a type of cooperation where both sides understand the situation. One pretends to suffer, the other pretends to cause harm, but in reality they are working together. The one who appears to lose already knows the cost, and both sides are acting for a third party to see. 3 cobblers together can match Zhuge Liang. This expression feels very down to earth. A cobbler was a common leather worker, a very low-status profession in ancient society. Zhuge Liang, on the other hand, represents ultimate intelligence in Chinese culture. He was seen as a master of both governance and military strategy. Putting 3 ordinary craftsmen together and saying they can match Zhuge Liang means that the combined wisdom of ordinary people can equal that of a great genius. Waving a big blade in front of Guan Yu is another very common saying. Guan Yu is portrayed in Romance of the Three Kingdoms as a godlike warrior. His weapon, the green dragon crescent blade, is said to weigh over 80 jin. On the battlefield, very few could truly match him. If someone were to step forward and say they wanted to show off their blade skills in front of Guan Yu, it would be almost suicidal. This saying is used to mock people who show off their abilities in front of true experts, especially when their skills are not impressive at all. One reason Romance of the Three Kingdoms contains so many idioms is that the novel itself stands between classical Chinese and spoken Chinese. Writing that is too academic does not easily enter popular culture. Speech that is too casual does not easily become fixed. Romance of the Three Kingdoms sits right between the two. Its stories were read again and again, retold again and again, and performed on stage again and again. Its characters and plots became part of public memory. Idioms and two-part sayings became fixed through this repeated spread. From a cultural and psychological perspective, Chinese people's love of idioms also fits the Chinese preference for indirect expression. In Chinese communication, people often avoid saying things too absolutely. They like using allusions, metaphors, and hints to express a position. In Chinese culture, openly criticizing someone or directly exposing something in front of many people is often considered impolite. Idioms can make a sentence short while still leaving room for interpretation. In cross-cultural communication, idioms are often the hardest part to translate. A direct translation can lose the historical context, while a meaning-based translation can weaken the force of the expression. Many foreign learners feel confused at the beginning because the Western languages they are used to often depend more on grammar and logical connectors, while Chinese idioms depend more on shared cultural knowledge and situational association. Modern Chinese still relies heavily on idioms. News reports use idioms to make expression more concise. Business speeches use idioms to create a sense of authority. Everyday conversation uses idioms to express humor and shared understanding. In online culture, new creative uses further extend the life of idioms. This flexibility is exactly why Chinese idioms continue to thrive. For foreign friends, the best way to approach Chinese idioms is to see them as compressed packages of historical experience. Behind each idiom, there is a complete logic of action and a value judgment. Once learners can place an idiom back into its historical scene and see the real difficulty a person faced, the specific choice they made, and the actual result they had to bear, the idiom is no longer an abstract word. It becomes a cultural tool that can be felt, used, and extended. In the end, Chinese idioms are so developed because Chinese culture has long believed that stories can preserve experience. History can explain reality, people can represent values, and short phrases can carry complex judgments. Romance of the Three Kingdoms pushed this ability to an extreme. The development of Chinese idioms is not an accidental language phenomenon. It is the result of the writing system, historical accumulation, education, folk storytelling, and social structure working together. In today's world, where information is highly fragmented, idioms still provide a stable frame of expression. They help people quickly reach shared understanding in complex situations. Their existence proves that language is not only a tool for communication, but also a carrier of cultural inheritance. As long as history is still being told, as long as experience is still being summarized, and as long as people still search for more efficient, more precise, and more resonant ways to express themselves, idioms will continue to play a role in Chinese and continue to gain new life in new contexts. If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to give the show a like, subscribe, and share it with someone you think would enjoy it too. Every listen, every like, and every share truly makes a difference. It directly shapes how far this program can go, and it gives me the motivation to keep digging into the sources, keep asking questions, and keep telling these fascinating stories of history and culture in a clear and engaging way. Thank you for spending this time with me. I will see you in the next episode.